ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהכל נהיה בדברו. The great leader of the Jewish people had basically three tasks in front of him. Number one, take the Hebrews out of Egypt, out of slavery. He did that. Number two, bring them to Mount Sinai where they would hear the word of God, they would receive the Torah, God's instruction, because without the law, liberty wouldn't have any sense. Number three was to bring them to the promised land, the land of Israel. Moshe accomplished the first two things. He brought them to the frontiers of Israel, but he was not permitted to enter the land of Israel. What a tragedy. That was, after all, the goal of his life. Moses pleaded with the Almighty, Va'et Hanan. He prayed to the Almighty, but to no avail. Moshe was buried outside of Israel. Even his physical remains did not enter eventually the land of Israel. Ironically, Moshe had taken the remains of Joseph to make sure that they are buried in Israel, but his own remains stayed outside of Israel. Why? Well, the Torah says, this is what our rabbis interpret, God told Moses on a certain occasion to speak to a rock so that it should bring forth water. But instead of speaking to the rock, Moshe took a rod and beat the rock. That was a grave mistake because God had told him to speak to it. Yet, on another occasion, a previous occasion, God told him to hit the rock. And even in this occasion, God told him to take his rod, but he told him to speak. Maybe Moshe misunderstood, but even if he didn't misunderstand, was that such a grave sin, hitting the rock instead of speaking to the rock, that should merit him not being able to enter the land of Israel? The punishment seems to be too severe. Maimonides says something else. Maybe because Moshe in one occasion called the Hebrew people a rebellious people, and a leader should never refer to his own people that way. Because of that, he was not permitted to enter the land of Israel. But even this seems not accord to the mistake that Moshe made. After all, the Torah says an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. It doesn't mean that you have to take out somebody's eye. It's just telling you that the punishment has to be commensurate with the sin, with the error that one commits. Professor Yeshayahu Leibowitz says something else. He says the following. You know why the people of Israel wandered 40 years in the desert? Because they didn't merit to go into the land of Israel. Why not? Because they lacked faith in God. They sent spies to see if this promised land is really the promised land, and they thought they could never conquer it, not being conscious of the fact that God was going to fight for them. God was going to help them. They didn't have enough faith in God. Therefore, they didn't merit to enter the land of Israel. That is understandable, but why not Moshe? Well, if the people of Israel lacked faith, in a sense it reflects upon the leader, then Moshe is guilty partially of their lack of faith. And it wouldn't be fair. If the people cannot go into the land of Israel, the leader cannot go either. I think there has to be this symbiosis between a leader and his people. They must share the same faith. And this is why I follow a leader, because I know that his faith is going to be my faith.